I'm going to show a bunch of slides that I hope don't put you to sleep.
See if they're
And I'll try to
recording.
get through them
See it's
quickly
recording.
because we
Okay,
are
good.
honored by presence of Medea and Jill Stein, and I'd like them to be contributing and participating in the Q&A. So bear with me. This is a somewhat ambitious presentation conceptually, because what I'm going to try to do is transform.
Yeah,
I'm going to
hold
try
it.
to
Very good.
transform your understanding of peace and perhaps what a peace movement means. And I'll start by giving an overview of what I'm going to try to do. We're going to talk about why the international security system is failing, why the war power is so effective and is starting to consume the world. How can peace power become equally effective? And how can the Green Party help to build peace power? So let's start at the ground level of these concepts. Conflict is going to be with us forever. We're never going to end conflict. It's this video camera, I think. Can that window be moved?
Let's just continue. Looks like it's set there.
It's not going to be legible. It's not going to be legible. You either got to turn off the camera or move the window.
Can't hear you.
What if we shut off the camera?
We can deal with it. We're Greens.
I sometimes think it's an imperfect world. All right, so conflict is with us forever. War is the destructive resolution of conflict. It's been with us for time immemorial, but it works. It's ugly, it's terrible, it causes death, destruction, and recurring struggle. Peace is not the absence of war. That is a hollow and empty conception of peace. Peace is the constructive resolution of conflict. Think about your health. If you consider yourself a healthy person, is that because you've never encountered a virus or a microorganism? No, you're healthy because you have a powerful immune system. Immune system is working constantly. It's very sophisticated, and it restores health and equilibrium to your body. If you had no immune system, there is this rare condition of people who have to live in a bubble because they have no immune system. So the issue is, how can peace power become this kind of immune system? And that means we can make something that's an affirmative principle, not just be reacting to the next war. You know, well, why doesn't Chicago burn down again? Is it because it has a fire department? I'm sure it's an excellent fire department, but decades, centuries of preventive measures and building codes and constructive activities and precautions and education prevent Chicago from burning down. And when there is the odd localized fire department deals with it. So the transformation of this simple notion of peace as just an episodic reactive thing into a permanent presence that can become as powerful as the war power is something that I'm going to explore here. Look at where we are right now as a result of the war power's spreading influence. Jill Stein can comment on some of these hotspots. right now, there's the biggest shooting war in Europe since World War II. Right now, Iran is in an escalating armed conflict with the US and Israel. There's a huge ongoing war in Sudan that nobody pays attention to because we don't sympathize with those people. Venezuela and Cuba, as we heard earlier, are in jeopardy of becoming armed conflicts. And Taiwan could turn into a conflagration at any moment. So I'll let Jill speak to some of these current global concerns. Oh yeah, quite a bit. But this, I'm just trying for people to understand how widespread and urgent the current conflicts are. Yeah, I'll stop
Do you
share.
want to just go through and then I'll touch on that when you're done?
Okay, I'll continue. You'll have to put up with the rest of my slides in order to hear our visiting dignitaries. What we're doing is we're playing nuclear roulette. You know, every time you flip a coin, the probability is exactly the same, 50%. But if you wonder about how many times you can flip a head or a tail consecutively, the probability diminishes steadily. It's like 50% of 50% of 50%. So every time we spin the nuclear roulette wheel, here's some near misses. Cuban Missile Crisis, I'm old enough to remember that. I was lining up inside a school to be away from the flying glass. That was the duck and cover time. But near misses are not proof that everything is okay. It's just the roulette wheel has spun again and it didn't come up on nuclear war. So the public has become numb to nuclear risk, and one of the important things Greens can do is revive this this understanding of the present danger. So why is war power so dominant? It has a lot of highly motivated components and practitioners, and they are very well organized. Peace activists are highly motivated and highly principled people, but their organization is very poorly developed. A couple of years ago, I actually made a complete diagram of the blob, the military-industrial complex, and as you can see, it is a sprawling, complex ecosystem. And the notion that it can be persuaded or influenced by citizen action is ill-founded, because it is a network of mutually protecting interests. If you look at these entities, if you go after any one of them, try to criticize the military or take the media to task, all of the others will rush to the aid of that sector of the blob. So the idea that this can be killed or dismantled is fallacious. It is an ecosystem that needs to be replaced by another ecosystem that does conflict resolution without endangering the planet, which is where the current spreading system of violence is taking us. So what about action? What about civic action? When people talk about organizing, there's this whole tactical dimension. How do you get people engaged? How do you get them out in the streets? I looked up some numbers. In 2003, there were people protesting the impending war, the buildup toward war in Iraq. In New York City, I was at that demonstration actually, in February 15th, there were an estimated 200,000 to 375,000 people in the streets of New York. I was there with my two sons. Not such small numbers. On the same day in Rome, there were 3 million people in the street. In Madrid and Barcelona, there's a combined total of 1.3 to 1.5 million. In London, there were 1 to 2 million people. We Greens can dream about numbers like this for direct action and demonstrations. These demonstrations, some of the largest ever recorded in history, had no effect whatsoever in averting the Iraq War. So what needs to be done? How do we need to build something, to build a kind of peace power that's a counterpart? When I did my analysis of the blob, I was looking for a weak point. You know, anatomy will show you what the vital organisms are, where you can strike to kill something. And I found it. It was financial. It was right in the heart of the Congress. There are a couple committees, Armed Services and Appropriations, that gate all of this vast flow of money. But you can't attack that point. You'd have to turn over 24 seats, and then you'd have to control the House Speaker and the Senate Majority Leader, who would immediately refill them with more war power people. So I thought further about this, and I determined that it's not really the money. I mean, instrumentally it is. If you could stop that flow, you could stop the war power complex. But the root of it really is fear and the lack of trust. And I apologize for the small print on this slide, but there's a great quote from Henry Thoreau. There are 1,000 people hacking at the branches of evil to one who's striking at the root. And, you know, we're hacking away. We're complaining about the horrors in Gaza. We're trying to stop escalation in Iran. We'd like to stop the war in Sudan, and people don't have the bandwidth to simultaneously engage all of these things. But what if we think about what is the root cause here? What is at the heart of all of these things? And what's at the heart of it all is systematic efforts to undermine trust and increase fear. And it's done in many ways, you know, xenophobia, Russophobia, Sinophobia, Islamophobia. It works. And especially when you control the media megaphone, when you can get that message out to millions of poorly informed people. Demonization, you know, Putin is Hitler, Saddam is Hitler, you know, your nasty aunt is Hitler. You know, anyone can be Hitler nowadays. If you tell people often enough, demonization works. So they have this whole bag of tricks to make people afraid and to destroy their trust. And the trust buster in chief is in the White House now. Basically launches sneak attacks, abrogates treaties. The Russian foreign minister summoned this up a couple of years ago. He said the United States is agreement incapable. What does it mean when someone tells you you're agreement incapable? It means your word is worthless. Anything you sign is worthless. There's no point negotiating with you. The Iranians have quickly reached that conclusion, unfortunately. So trust is really the key here. And I mentioned these things already. Ethnic hostility too. You know those sorts of people are not the kind of people you can deal with. You can fill in whatever sort of person you want to get ethnic hostility. And of course, clandestine operations. President Truman opened this Pandora's box in the late 40s by giving the CIA the power to deny anything it does. So if you want to turn up the heat in any corner of the world, the CIA and the military will do a border incursion or a raid or an assassination, and they will deny they did it. And the public will expect them to deny they did it because that's being patriotic. So, and then suddenly the afflicted country will start saying hostile things about it, and will say, you see, we should fear them. Before the Vietnam War really accelerated, there were clandestine raids on North Vietnam. Very few people know that today. There were raids on Cuba preceding the Bay of Pigs, I believe. So this is yet another tool for aggravating fear, secrecy, and clandestine operations. So this is a key slide here. The destruction of trust is a progressive function. And if you look back at the history of some of the armed conflicts we've been in, it all starts with some kind of dispute, and then a propaganda campaign, and then provocations, escalation, and then finally we get a shooting war. And this is the playbook that's happened over and over and over again. And what is needed is counteracting this in a symmetrical way. We need institutions that can interfere with this process, like an immune system that can recognize the buildup that's taking place, that this chain of manipulation is taking us toward another deadly conflict. So this is a fanciful slide. It sort of imagines, what if we had something like the blob? What if we had a peace power ecosystem that had institutions that could detect deteriorating trust, could provide objective information, that could assist in negotiating nonviolent settlement of disputes? It would create this virtuous cycle that could head off a conflict. I'm not going to go into the feasibility of this because it's too small to read, but technology is moving in a direction that favors objective information about conflicts. There's something that's come into existence just in the last decade called OSINT, Open Source Intelligence, which people can get to through alternate sources in the internet, not through the major media, of course, which are just stenographers for the blob. But this is going to get stronger and stronger. There's now commercial satellite imagery that reveals who's doing what to whom. You can now see evidence of damage inflicted by the US and Iran in the current hostilities. So things are moving toward a more transparent world, and that will be an aid toward peace power. So this is the virtuous cycle. If you get better information, if you have cooperation, if you have transparency, it will build in a way that counteracts the degradation of trust that's in the playbook of the war power. I thought for a while about power historically as a movement principle. We all witnessed Black Power during the civil rights struggle. During the pre-Civil War era, the opposition to slavery conceived of the institution as the slave power, just as I view this military-industrial complex as the war power. And once you realize that this is a structure that has to be counteracted in a similar way by a sophisticated and a multi-component organized ecosystem that works on a grander scale. That's not episodic, that's not just reactive. Make no mistake, it's a good thing to take part in demonstrations. It's a good thing to make your voice heard. It's morally vital to your spiritual health to do that, but it's not enough. It will never stop the war power. There has to be an institutional birth that can evolve into something of equivalent strength. This is sort of a flight of fancy here. You have to start small, you have to start somewhere. there's a recurrent dispute in one of the most hostile places in the world, on the border between China and India. And for some reason, they can't settle this border. And this would be a perfect opportunity for a peace power collaboration to get the parties to just sit down and draw the line and put an end to it. There's recurrent skirmishing over this border. No one pays attention to it because there are so many more terrible things going on. But this would be an instance where a peace power initiative could be successful. So who can take part in building this new ecosystem? International institutions, the UN needs to be revitalized. Political parties and the Greens can have a crucial role in this. Foundations, NGOs, academia, and technology providers. You know, people will say, well, what will happen to all these bomb makers and weapons contractors? All the same surveillance technologies and decision support technologies are readily adaptable. You know, those swords can be beaten into plowshares. What does this mean for the Green Party? It's an opportunity. It's an enormous opportunity. If you look at what the Uniparty does, it's diametrically opposed to the stated objectives of the Green Party. You know, we oppose endless wars. We're trying to get out of the nuclear roulette casino. We want to demilitarize and redirect investment. You can't abolish the military, but you can make it way smaller than it is, because you're always going to have conflict. You're always going to have these minor things that have to be forcibly dealt with. But with something a tenth of the size of our establishment, it would be sufficient. And diplomacy. I can remember when Anthony Blinken was being confirmed, he said he was going to turn to diplomacy. That was quite a joke. You know, putting human security first, and also addressing climate, which is an aggravating factor in a lot of conflict. So this dream may someday be realized. I think that there are going to be some very serious military events in our future. We may well see a regional nuclear exchange. And when that happens, the world will be shocked and look around for alternatives. And we have the opportunity to begin building those alternatives so they'll be available when the world comes to its senses. So what can we do? Promote these trust-building institutions, expand verification and transparency, support diplomacy, strengthen international arms control, and most importantly, show collaboration and trust among our like-minded colleagues. And this is a painful subject for me, because when I was new to peace activism 5 or 6 years ago, I broached the idea of a national peace conference. And I mentioned it in GPACs, I mentioned it within the Greens, and I heard crickets chirping. So as things get worse and worse, as we are more and more at the mercy of this terrible war power, I'm hoping that we can find the willingness to make common cause with like-minded organizations. And I think we have to accept selective alignment. We cannot put a purity test, put everyone through a purity test and say, if they do not match every item on my ideological agenda, I refuse to do anything with them, no matter how helpful they could be to us. I won't work for peace because they don't like X and they say Y. This is an issue that is literally life and death. Climate crisis can kill you or your grandchildren in 20, 30, 50 years. A nuclear warhead launched now is 30 minutes away. That's how long it takes an ICBM to reach any point in the world. Nuclear war can kill you not tomorrow, not next week, in the next 30 minutes. And that's not even the long-term consequences of nuclear winter, which will wipe out just about everyone else in case they manage to miss the initial fatality envelope. So my final words, our civilization has become very good at war power. The challenge for us is to build peace power. And I think the Greens should embrace the concept and become champions of this cause. I'll ask.
Yeah, I just want to give a really big thank you to Haig for that really interesting discussion. And thank you to everybody for being here and for all you're doing. And I think this is like the question of the hour. There are many questions of the hour, but there are some main questions of the hour, you know, and that is like, how do we try to keep the nuclear bombs from flying perhaps next week, related to just the complete blow up that our country is causing in the Strait of Hormuz and beyond. I mean, it's not hard to connect the dots. In fact, it's very hard not to connect the dots to see how this blows up in our faces maybe tomorrow. And in a way, it kind of takes all of our, you know, our humanity and our ingenuity to like figure out how do we try to ramp down this crisis that's blowing up in our faces, which is so much a product of, you know, I think arguably centuries, but at least decades of history. And I would look especially to the US concept of total, what is it called? Total something dominance, full spectrum dominance. Thank you. Yes, which is the specific Pentagon policy that was declared around 1990 with the fall of the old Soviet Union, that we're top dog now everywhere for the remainder of time. This is the end of history. We are now the top dog in all geographies, in all potential realms of conflict, and that we will not tolerate even the rise of regional powers. This is actually what they said. This was Wolfowitz, that, you know, genius that came to us with George Bush and others that have basically affirmed this policy. So we are, you know, kind of, as Martin Luther King put it, my country is the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today. That was back in the 1960s. And now the tools of violence have just, you know, grown by orders of magnitude, such that, you know, we don't even want to go there. But I will say one thing, we're not just a half hour away anymore, because now Russia and China and probably Iran too, they have hypersonic missiles that can get here in just a few minutes. And we also have no missile defense against them. Missile defense was really a pretense to start with, not something you could rely on, and really just an exercise in boondoggle for the defense contractors, another excuse for spending trillions and trillions of dollars, which is really what this is all about. And that gets me to kind of the flip side of what a dark time this is. And it's not just in terms of war, it's also the economy. And to note that the crisis of this exploding conflict, not only in the Middle East, but also in Ukraine, and the proxy war against Russia, which we've been conducting actually for decades. And, you know, the potential war breaking out with China, you know, the takeover of Latin America, which happens to be in our own backyard. So of course we get to control it, but there's no power equivalent that could really explode the way it can in so many other regions of the world. And what's really, you know, very sobering right now is that the EU has bought into this. They are militarizing. They have accepted this mythology of Russia, that Russia is dedicated to taking over, you know, the old Russian Empire and beyond. So there are many hot spots which are driven here by lots of propaganda, misconceptions, the blob that Haig was talking about. But the flip side of that is that we don't have to change people's minds in the US and around the world. And by the way, you may have seen some of the international polls that really show that the US is right down there at the bottom now, next to Israel and North Korea, actually. But I think it's Israel that's at the bottom, and the US is like number 4 from the bottom among, 80 countries or so. We've really demonstrated to the world what our global order is about, which is, about domination and endless war and profiteering and imperialism and all that. But the fortunate thing is around the world, the people know that. And in this country, above all, people know that. It's not only that there's overwhelming opposition to the war in Iran, which is absolutely unprecedented at this stage of the game. So there is opposition to the war in Iran. There is opposition to our support for Israel, and there is opposition to the Israeli genocide and the state of occupation and apartheid and genocide taking place there. So in the scheme of things, that is the hardest thing to move, public opinion. But public opinion has already moved. So everyone here who has stood out there with a sign, who's been out there on social media, who's called their congressperson, which is another bag of worms, and a big thank you to Medea for bird dogging them the way that she does, and big credit to her for the little baby steps. They are taking baby steps, but it shows at least that we are being effective and we are creating the heat and we have transformed public opinion, which is really amazing. So there are many questions to ask right now, but the key one, I think, is in light of the question that Malcolm X put, or a challenge really that he put. He said, we are not outnumbered, we're just out organized. And what Haig was talking about is ways that we can be organized. We are not funded like the military industrial complex and, the forces of war profiteering and their apologists, which is a whole industry unto itself, the pretend to fix it Democrats who will, they'll symbolically oppose something like this horrific merger with the Israeli military, which is just unbelievable. So, at the 11th hour, half of them will support, shutting that down or not going there. But, in order to basically cleanse their records before the midterms are coming up. So it's important not to be talked out of our mission. And again, as Haig was saying, this is all about our building a force with real institutional infrastructure. And I want to encourage people, by the way, if you're not green, go green, because otherwise you're essentially endorsing the duopoly and the endless wars and militarism and utter destruction of the planet that it has enabled, both Democrats and Republicans. So I think it's very important for all of us to vote with our feet for the alternative, but then we really have to build these institutions. And come to my talk at 7 o'clock, because it's sort of like the answer to what Haig has raised here in a more systematic way, with a PowerPoint that I can give you for other suggestions. But I want to quickly say something about, okay, so we've won in the court of public opinion, but what do we do and how do we do it? And that's a subject for longer discussion, but on the theory that you have to address the worst crisis first, what's going on in the Middle East, also Cuba and Latin America, because it's our backyard, and in some ways it's a simpler proposition than fighting the nuclear powers that are bearing down right now on Iran and on the Gulf of Hormuz. By the way, an ally in this struggle is the fact that this raging, rampant US militarism is coming back to bite every single household in the United States of America right now, not to mention around the world, because the price of oil, you may have noticed while you were traveling here, has skyrocketed. I don't know what it is today, but yesterday it was $100 per barrel. And the illusion of the oil markets that somehow everything would be okay, and they're responding to Trump's market timing in his pronouncements and all that, that's wearing thin. It's about time, that they woke up. Just as Trump has kind of destroyed all of his options right now. And it's terrifying where this could go, especially given the propensity of both Donald Trump, but also Bibi Netanyahu, to use nuclear weapons. And in fact, people may or may not be aware that many decades past, Golda Meir, at that time the prime minister in Israel, was very close to actually using nuclear weapons and was talked out of it by the United States at that time. So we are all paying the price right now. The crisis of the economy and of survival has really converged with the crisis of war and militarism. And that's a tool on our side that really makes the American people very hungry for ways to solve this. I want to mention one other thing that maybe we'll have time to talk about a little bit more today, but maybe not, maybe tonight. And that is Uniting for Peace 2.0. Raise your hand if you knew about Uniting for Peace 1.0. All right. Uniting for Peace it's a mechanism that works through the UN, but not through the Security Council. It's a way around the Security Council so that the US and Israel cannot veto it. This is essentially what was done to isolate and to sanction across the board, total sanctions, economic, military, trade, diplomatic, everything against Israel. Because Israel is not going to, A, stop the genocide in Gaza, expanding into Lebanon, Syria, Iran, but Israel is also not going to allow peace to take place with Iran. It's going to be hard enough to solve that without Israel continuing to disrupt it. And I think the world knows that. The UN took a vote like 2 years ago in the General Assembly that was 90% saying it's time to totally sanction Israel and treat Israel like the pariah state that it is, with complete economic and military boycott, which is the only way to shut down the incredible devastation, the genocide, and the militarism and the propensity to use nukes. What's his name? Larry Summers not Summers, Larry, the good guy, not the bad guy. No, the Larry who was the Colin Powell's, Wilkerson, yes. He made in one of his wonderful interviews, he said specifically that if we were able to shut down all of the weapons, just the weapons, I don't think he was even talking about economic aid, but that should happen as well, and trade and so forth. But if the weapons were shut down completely, Israel would not last a week even. They rely on continued support. We need to shut that down. And it's not just the US, the whole world needs to do it. And the United Nations General Assembly voted 90% to support that. And that's when the Trump scam was launched, that he was going to provide this peace plan, the Gaza peace plan, which was just a total scam and has been basically covered to continue genocide. But the world has woken up to that. That Trump peace plan no longer holds sway. There are many things that have converged, I think, to make another effort, like what South Africa did before, really feasible now. And I just want to mention anyone who's running for Congress in the room or considering running for Congress, raise your hand. Okay, so we got a few of you here because you can force this issue into public dialogue, that there is a solution here to the war in Iran, which is coming back to bite us, as well as to the moral catastrophe taking place in Gaza right now. There is a solution that builds on what the UN General Assembly, not the Security Council, has previously done before to stop dead in their tracks the practice of apartheid. And in this case, it's apartheid, occupation, and genocide. So this is potentially a feasible plan. And I think we as Greens, because we are not slaves to the military industrial complex and the war profiteers, we actually have the freedom to push this forward, to really mobilize. And there was a lot of mobilization happening around it, such that the US felt like it had to create this distraction of the Trump peace plan. This could potentially be revived. There will be more discussion about that this weekend, including, let's see, I think Sam is going to do a workshop. When is it, Sam?
Tomorrow morning. Forgive me, they changed the time.
Sorry.
According to this program, which I hope is up to date, it is 9 o'clock tomorrow.
Check your Eventi schedule. It's worth getting. It's a pain in the butt to learn how to use Eventi, but once you have gotten it, it makes things really drop dead simple, and that will give you any updates and room numbers and stuff like that. So that workshop will be, I think, very much about uniting for peace. But the thing is to think about that as a really powerful tool that not only could solve this one particular crisis, but it could establish a precedent that could be used in other areas of the world. The world is in rebellion right now against the stranglehold of the US on foreign policy. And this would be the place to really start developing a mechanism for fighting back against that. The other thing I want to suggest is not just register for the Green Party, but join the Green Party Peace Action Committee, because this is really about having, the people power to develop strategies and campaigns that focus on specific points of intervention where we can potentially turn things around, because the public opinion is right for it. We've had a huge win in the court of public opinion, and now we just need to bring that into, the court of diplomacy and international relations, but we can do that. The hardest part has actually already been won. Thank you all very much. And now we have the pleasure of bringing on Medea Benjamin, who can talk about how these battles are being won in the street and in the halls of Congress to the extent that we can win them. Thank you, Medea.
Mahalo, Jill, you were great.
So I'm just going to make some random comments, and thank you, Haig, so much for that presentation, and Jill for yours as well. A couple of things, Jill, when you talk about the UN, I think we should be aware that they're in the process now of selecting the new Secretary General for the UN. And this is not in the radar of many of us because of so much else going on. But now the Secretary General is supposed to come from Latin America because it's rotating. But the US is pushing the head of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, to be the next one. And he is terrible. He's the one that Argentina is pushing. And of course, their government is extremely right-wing right now. And he has been known for his duplicity as the head of that organization, and really laying the groundwork for a US attack on Iran. Tremendous hypocrisy of not bringing up Israel's nuclear weapons. And there are other candidates who are better. The one that would be great is unfortunately not in the higher ranking running, but there is also a call for a woman to be the Secretary General. Not that being a woman would automatically make the person great, but there has never been a woman Secretary General since the founding of the United Nations. And a number of the women in the running, like Michelle Bachelet, are better than he would be. And then also something else that just happened in the last couple of days that I think is important to bring into our consciousness is the sort of agreement that was signed between the Saudi Arabia and the United States about nuclear power. And I say sort of agreement because the agreement that the two representatives of those countries signed was then announced publicly. And then Trump turned around in his Truth Social and said, oh, but they first have to sign the Abraham Accords. So obviously, Israel wormed its way into that. And said, wait a minute, it was supposed to be a condition. And Saudi Arabia said in the past, we won't sign those Abraham Accords until there is a real pathway for a Palestinian state. So thank goodness that whole agreement is now up in the air, because we certainly don't want that agreement. We don't want the US and Westinghouse to make billions of dollars on nuclear power in Saudi Arabia. And according to the agreement, supposedly, Saudi Arabia was allowed to enrich uranium and didn't have the kind of intense inspections that they're supposed to have. So we hope this whole thing blows it up. But I think it was interesting, Haig, in your presentation, how you talked about Trump being incapable of any negotiations. Here's just a great example of it. And sometimes his incapability actually works in our favor. Then you also brought up, Haig, the importance of looking at like-minded entities and how we can build that up. And so I just wanted to throw some of them out there. And one is unions. Now, for unions, it's been very difficult to get some of the big unions to be part of a peace movement. Why? Because a number of them make money from wars. And some of the most powerful ones make a lot of money from wars. I remember when I wrote a book, well, I think it was the one on Ukraine, making sense of a senseless war, and going around the country and speaking at universities and encouraging people in the universities not to choose a path that was related to the Pentagon. And so many of them, the young people would say, yeah, well, give us the options, because the only place where we in the engineering department can get jobs is through Pentagon related companies or contracts. And of course, now with AI, so much of it is Pentagon and war related. So some of those unions are very hard to penetrate, but there are other unions, and especially those in the healthcare field. And we've been excited to be partnering with groups like the National Unions, the National Nurses Association, that has a very strong anti-war policy, and has they used to be very strong years ago, you might remember, and then they became quieter. Now they're back again, and I think they'll be a very important union for us to work with. There are groups like Doctors Against Genocide that are new and very important. They have been trying to get the big institutions within the healthcare for-profit system, like the American Medical Association, to come out against the genocide in Gaza, or at least to come out for their colleagues like Dr. Abu Sufia, who are being tortured in Israeli prisons. And it's been very hard to penetrate those institutions, but there's a lot of work being done, including our organization, Code Pink, working on that. And I think we have to just keep calling them out and forcing them to join us in saying that war is bad for people's health, and that the pot of money that's now going to be over $1 trillion is money we need for Medicare for all. And so they need to join us. The other big area is around environmental groups. And that has been both frustrating and rewarding. We have been trying for years to get them to come out and feel that they are part of a peace movement, because I think anybody who's part of the peace movement feels they're part of an environmental movement. And some of you might have seen, in fact, one of you told me that you were involved in getting it around, Abby Martin's new film, Earth's Greatest Enemy, which is a great tool. It's just shocking to see it and to be showing it around to make people understand that the Pentagon, the military industrial complex war is indeed the Earth's greatest enemy, and that any environmental group worth its salt has to come out against war. And there are some that have been very strong on that, like the Sunrise Movement, like 350.org, like Extinction Rebellion, some of those very active environmental groups, but some of the big ones, and the Sierra Club is starting to turn around and come out. It's taken a long time. But Environmental Defense Fund, it's funny, we had a meeting with its US representative and they were saying, well, if we come out against, we asked them to come out against the 1.5 trillion Pentagon budget. And they said, well, we don't want to look like we're anti-military. So there is a lot of work to do within the environmental movement. The immigrant rights movement, I think this is an area that's so clear cut. Again, like those of us in the anti-war movement feel we're part of the environmental movement, we're also part of the immigrant rights movement. And we have to make those connections very explicit, like the fact that so many of the immigrants in this country come because of war. And also the policies that the US is implementing overseas are coming back to haunt us with the way that ICE is operating in our own neighborhoods. Also, I think the issue about the data centers, it's one of the most exciting grassroots movement that exists right now. And it's very nonpartisan, and it's very much from the communities that say that we don't see any benefit. I mean, you could try to convince us that putting a Lockheed Martin factory in our community is good for jobs, but what are you going to convince us about these data centers? They're only going to make our electric bills skyrocket, and the pollution and the sound. So those are really, really exciting grassroots movements. And a lot of the AI is for war. So we have to make those connections. And there are more groups that are popping up now that are saying no AI for war. And I think that's really great. The most controversial one, and I don't know if Haig, if you were referring to this or not, kind of implying, is do we make links with libertarian and right-wing groups? And that is very controversial in general. And I think what I understand is that people say, well, let's put our energy into these other groups that haven't come out for being part of an anti-war movement that we do see eye to eye with in a lot of areas. But then people say, well, what about Tucker Carlson? And what about all of these influencers that have really moved millions of people on this issue of Israel and also on Iran right now, because they're very much against the war in Iran. And I will leave this to a discussion because it's such a fascinating issue to talk about. But there are definitely pros and cons, as you can imagine, in this. But if we are talking about a big tent, let's recognize that there are a lot of people who don't identify with Greens, with even Democrats, but do identify as part of anti-war. And I think when Jill made the point about how we now have public opinion on our side, we have to recognize that that public opinion does include a lot of people on the right. In fact, you look at the Republican Party, when you go to what they call the youth in the Republican Party, which is under 50, it does show that they are split evenly on the issue of like the Iran war and on the issue of Israel. And the only thing that keeps so many of them still in the pro-war camp is that they are really still tied to Trump. And I think that will break very soon. Then the last thing I wanted to say is that there are exciting movements happening around the world. And I was just in London at a big anti-war conference, And while I keep referring to you, Haig, you say that getting out on the streets is not enough. I agree it's not enough. And Jill said, yes, but we still have to get on the streets. And I think you said that as well. It is amazing to see in the UK how month after month they have been able to have very, very large anti-war demonstrations. And they're a much smaller country than we are, which helps in some way because geographically it's smaller as well. But they have an ongoing coalition that has regular meetings, regular gatherings, and regular demonstrations. And that's very exciting to see. The other thing at this anti-war conference that I was at is that there were people from all over Europe. And we have to recognize the beauty of the trade movements in so many of the European countries that are very strong and very anti-war. And number one up there is the Italians that are able to shut down their ports and do general strikes. And they're really quite amazing, even though they have a right-wing president right now. So it is really exciting to look at some of those movements and see how they were able to grow and become really strong, and the kind of network that they are building in Europe, which is so important because with NATO and the leaders of their countries following along with the US, and the US call to spend 5% of the GDP, which might sound like little, but it's a massive amount of money. The safety net of the Europeans is being destroyed right now. So it's so important for their groups to come together. And the last two movements I wanted to just give a shout out to, because I love them so much, are the Albanian movement, the Flamingo Revolution, that shows that you can take on the billionaires, the US billionaires, the Trump family, and I think they're going to win. And the other is what's called the cockroach movement in India, that has taken the epithet that was given to them, like they're little cockroaches, they're nothing, and say, yeah, you want to see, and are building this really big youth-led movement against the repressive Modi regime. So there are great movements out there, and we have to be part of that and just be bigger and more effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Medea.
Question? Question from Florida?
Yes, go ahead.
There was a poll today on CNN, and it revealed that 61% to 67% want U.S. aid to Israel to be cut or totally eliminated. And that 61% was Republicans. So this issue has leapfrogged, and we can't be scared of saying cut 100% of aid to Israel. And we have to remember that Obama is the one that introduced the 10-year $3.4 billion per year, added up to $38 billion to give to Israel. And that does not expire till 2028. And part of that law says that no future U.S. government could ever cut that, before it expired. I mean, this is corruption. This is Democratic Party corruption, and we have to run with it. Thank you.
I think there was an implicit question there, which is, sure, there's an implicit. Right. The implicit question is why doesn't Congress respond to these overwhelming imbalances of public opinion? And I can tell you that my congressman was swiftly removed. His name was Jamal Bowman in Westchester, and he was vaporized by AIPAC. And Mr. Massey in Kentucky, I believe, had a similar experience. So the power of finance over congressional and senatorial seats is enormous. I think it's $250,000 to run for Congress and a couple million to run for a Senate seat. And the money will talk. And until you have even bigger margins that can't be dismissed, this inertia of the war power will continue. So I think we have to build for a future in which we have comparable strength organizationally, not just in terms of passion and enthusiasm. I have a couple leaflets from GPACs for people who. Oh, go ahead. I can't see. Go ahead.
So, and this relates to the issue of this memorandum of understanding. The $3.3 billion part of that was just voted on in the House, and there were 104 members of Congress who voted to cut that off entirely. And that's incredible because it included the ones who have been pro-Israel for all this time, like the Democrat whip in Congress, Catherine Clark. It also included Nancy Pelosi. Yeah. So, you know, the times they are a-changing.
I agree. Things are shifting. Is there another question? I'm at a disadvantage. I don't have my laptop.
Go ahead with your question, Jack.
Yes. I wanted to ask the host and all the speakers actually, if they would agree that a prerequisite for full spectrum peace dominance, so to speak, would be a transition out of capitalism to a more just economic system. And if you agree with that, as I do, how would we deal with coalitions with organizations who do not believe that, who believe that peace is possible coexisting with capitalism? I think that's an interesting problem as far as coalitions are concerned. I'd like to get the opinion of the speakers. Thank you.
That's a very important question because it's a watershed issue for many people. And the answer
Speak louder,
is,
please.
it's an important issue for many people, kind of a litmus test. And if you look at the evolution of civilization, you don't tend to see light switch transitions between economic models and governmental models. It's very Darwinian. And economics, I remember from my Samuelson text, it's about what's produced, how it's produced, and for whom. And something will displace capitalism, but it's not going to be a destructive simplification of the kind that many people wish for. It will be something even more complex and more highly evolved, and it will be more egalitarian. But we can't really foresee the circumstances of the economy more than a decade or two ahead. If we can get these terrible threats to human survival under control, there's every reason to believe resources will become more abundant. And then the ability to address poverty and the ability to have more egalitarian distribution will be feasible. So I would say we have to take a path of evolution and not just take a meat axe to one system or another.
I'm going to just jump in to say these are really important questions that I think deserve a lot more time than what we have today. But I want to thank the gentleman for his question and, agree in principle that I think most of us understand that capitalism and militarism are joined at the hip, and we need a solution. We have to solve them jointly. We're not going to solve one without the other. But let's bike rack that for the moment, because we have some other questions in the room here that would be great to get to. Thank you.
Yes, hi. My name's Ellen Corley. I did run for Congress in the 5th District of Illinois as a Democrat, tried to break in and unseat the incumbent, but mainly on these anti-war, anti-corruption issues. But I'm also an active member of the International Peace Coalition of the Schiller Institute, and they're really on top of this. And Helga LaRouche, they have every Friday, 10 to 12 Zoom meeting internationally. And they've said regarding this bill, this memorandum, I guess, of understanding 219, that merges Israeli and US military in every way. It's like Palantir taking over the world, I think. And we've got to speak up about it. But they say there is hope that the Senate, if we really get on the phones, can potentially filibuster and stop this, even though the Democrats, they voted for it in Congress. There's an opportunity now to stop it, so that we should all be focused on that. And I wanted to say, I recognize now Sam Husseini, who, I saw he was running for Congress, and kind of like me, it's like, seems, we've all got to run for Congress, right? Speak up, and that's important.
Hi, I'm Michael Dub. I'm running for Senate for the Green Party from the state of North Carolina. And I appreciate everyone being here. And I think I have a comment and a question. Like, we all have this information, and this peace movement is like, I don't know if it's because we grew up during the Cold War. It was more in our face and more relevant, but it's like some of our talking points are like aging out. So how do we, reach the younger generation to get them to come in? It's like with Peace Action and all these other organizations. How do we talk to the younger people, the more marginalized people, in a way they understand us? Because I know a lot of these things, we're talking over people's heads, and we need to, how can we make it more relevant to those people? Thank you.
Should I try to answer that? I think one thing I would suggest is to make stronger presence in alternate media, because young people get their information and process it differently from people approaching triple digits like some of us. So that's one avenue. And if you're campaigning, you should go to where the eyes and the ears are for the younger electorate.
Yeah, and I'll just say the economic consequences of endless war are right on everybody's, breakfast table, the roof you can't afford to keep over your head. I mean, people are, just beyond the pale right now in the struggle to survive. 67% of Americans, I think, are living paycheck to paycheck. We don't even hear about it now. We used to hear about it, but now the nuclear war that's about to explode, in the run up to it is kind of capturing a lot of the headlines here. But the suffering has only become more immense. And with the skyrocketing cost of fuel and food and transportation, it's really ramifying into everything, really every walk of life. So there are lots of opportunities, I think, to translate the crisis of war into just the crisis of cost of living for everyday people. So it's really, it's a great tool that we can use right now. And I do want to announce, by the way, that Sam Husseini's, is Sam in the room right now? He just came in. Yeah. But his workshop on Uniting for Peace, which is a real tool that we can use at the international level to harness the public momentum that's out there. He's doing a workshop on that in this room tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. It's back on the schedule. Somehow it got dropped through the cracks.
So I think the young people are with us, or we are with them, however you want to put it. And I see it so much in the pro-Palestine movement. It's funny because I run into people and they say, "Oh, my grandson loves you." And you know, I see it in the ICE movement, in the neighbors who are coming out. It's just like ordinary people. And also, we know how much the student movement has been so critical in building up the narrative against Israel. And while we might not see the encampments now because they've been repressed so much, the student movement still is very strong. So I feel more positive about young people. And of course, when you see people like Mandami, who've, you know, not only become a great mayor, but has, what is it, almost like 80,000 people who were out on the streets working for him. Most of those were young people.
My name is Ryan Codine. I'm from New Jersey / the Garden State. Kind of what you guys were talking about, also what he said about what do we do to talk to young people about getting in on the peace movement. That is a good start. However, talking to young people in a way they're going to understand us older generations about being docile is only so much. What do we do with other circumstances that can make them want to become a docile generation, thus creating a docile society? In other words, what is the remedy, such as like housing, healthcare, social equity, etc.? And what about those who would be impervious to said wanting to become docile, despite the fact that they have all of these circumstances that would make them want to live a peaceful life with those who do not wish to cause harm to others?
Well, that's a very subtle question. There are often theories of generational decline, but I think to some degree that's patronizing. I always remember one of Julian Assange's comments that courage is contagious, and people value status. They value personal status, and there's more to status than just material success. There's the display of conviction. There's the display of commitment, display of being part of something that's bigger than yourself. And I think as long as those are status markers for young people, there's no reason to think they'll sink into some kind of numb proletariat. I think humans are competitive and status conscious. And if we can show them a way to earn a more righteous status, if you will, I think they'll respond to that.
Okay, hello. Yeah, we have a question from Hawaii, I believe. Do you want to jump in and ask your question?
Yeah, thank you and aloha and good morning to everybody. Two things. Earlier today, there was a session by Rosalind Tusinant. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. Planting seeds for future growth. And obviously, as you can see, I'm part of the baby boomers. And she talked about Generation Z, and it was fascinating. And I'm not going to give her a workshop here. So I would check that out because it was things that I hadn't thought of what young people, how to reach them, and that in 10 years, they're going to be the majority of people. So that's one. And also someone just mentioned Mamdani, and I know he's really, a lot of people are very impressed. And yesterday I heard on Democracy Now! The Columbia University graduate student that ICE threw in, locked up. He mentioned that Mamdani has, and he's from New York and Columbia University, hasn't said a thing about what's happened to him. So I just wanted to, and also Haig and Jill, of course, I love you, and Medea, thank you for this presentation. It was great. Aloha.
Well, it's more of a comment. I'm Marlon. I'm running for Congress in Texas. And I want to say that I think young people are tired of the bullshit. They're tired. They know of the phoniness, the inauthenticity. And so I think we need to be unapologetic in our values. We need to be for abolishing ICE, abolishing Israel, dissolving the military-industrial complex. We need to be bold. And also, it's very important that we make structural changes in our party so that we're more cohesive. There's not as much bickering and drama. And I think that would make a lot of people join us. Thank you.
My name is Will. I'm from Maryland. Piggyback off what he said. Yeah, young people are just ready to go. I think that we're really getting more involved and we're really tired of the bullshit. And we need these action steps for like what we should do. Some more protests. But like I live in the suburbs in Maryland, so there's no protests around me. But other action steps for us is like voting for these candidates and getting to know our candidates. And hopefully the candidates can go on and win. But then they can push for real change in Congress or in the state or local elections for peace. That's it.
In response to that, I just want to say one of the best ways to get involved, because the political system tries to intimidate you, with all kinds of rules and, complexities, and to shut people down and to keep you out. And what I have found to be really helpful in my own kind of development, I was as intimidated as anybody when I was in my younger years and in college. I would go to the demos, but I couldn't imagine, like doing anything more than just showing up and being a body there. And one of the best learning tools really is to become a volunteer in a really good campaign that you can trust in your vicinity. And I think that Sam Hosseini, I think, is running in your neck of the woods, and there may be others as well. And that's just being a part. You're kind of out there on the front lines, you're talking to people. That work is really, really important. And it's, thank you. That work is really important, and it's transformative, and it's a really great way for you to become empowered as an agent to struggle with our, powers that be. Thank you.
Okay, I want to make a plug for GPACs. flyers for our upcoming webinar on the Hiroshima anniversary. We did that, GPACs, our next webinar is going to be on the anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima, August 6th. We do that every summer. And I have a couple of flyers with a QR code if you want to register for it. And as always, we are seeking members of the GPACs committee. And we don't accept anyone over 100 years of age. So that is a firm limit, but please contact us if you have any interest. Note that you don't have to take the plunge. You can be an observer. We'll give you a link. You can see what goes on in our meetings. And then if you want to get further involved, you can be endorsed by your state Green Party and have a voting role. But we would definitely like to see some additional members. Thank you all.